libraries. Those can really save you a lot of time if you use them well. So I'm going to open this diagram here. And what I've got is, this is a sales account mapping org chart that is fictitious. But it is something our sales team uses this a lot. So I wanted to show you how to add a shape legend. And we'll look at how to kind of organize those shapes, make them look the same and uniform, and then put them into a container to group them, and some other tips like that. Now, while we're here, one of the tips that I myself just recently learned and use a lot is a keyboard shortcut that I wasn't aware of. If you're on a PC or a Mac, if you hold spacebar and then use your mouse to scroll in or out, you can use that as an easy way to zoom in and out of your chart. Also, while holding the spacebar, if you click and drag your chart, you'll see you can move that around. So that can save you some time just navigating around your chart. So as you can see, I've got some color coding happening here in my org chart. And what I want to do is I want to make all of these different shapes uniform in size. And then I also want to make them, I want to save them. I'm using this org chart structure in a lot of different accounts that we're mapping. So instead of having to recreate it every single time I make a new chart, I want to save this so that I can just drag it out onto each of those, and people who are looking at them can easily understand what the color coding means. So let's start by organizing these shapes. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag over all of them. I'm then going to go up into this Arrange menu. Here you'll see you have a lot of options. So you can align objects, and that'll line up whether or not you want them to align on the top or on the left. You can also distribute to make sure that they're evenly spaced. For right now, I'm going to start by matching the size of these objects. So I'm going to match the width. Then I'm going to go back in. I'm going to match the height. So now you can see those are all the same. Next, I'm going to go ahead and distribute them vertically. And finally, I'm going to align them on the left. So instead of having to individually adapt each of those objects, I can easily use the features in the Arrange menu to make those all work together. Now, another thing I want to do is I want to group these shapes all together so that I can easily drag them, either if I need to move them around on my diagram, or that'll be helpful when I'm saving them as a custom shape. So I can do that by either selecting all of these objects, right-clicking and pushing Group, but there's also another shortcut that I want to show you using containers. So the containers library, you may be familiar if you've been using swim lanes for a shape that you commonly use in flowcharts, but the containers library has this cool kind of magnetized personality to it that makes it stick objects to those containers. So let's quickly show you how that works. I'm going to go to the search icon in the top of my toolbox, and here I'm going to search for container. So you can see we've got a bunch of different container libraries. The one I'm looking for is this basic one. So I'm going to pin that to my toolbox, go back to my standard toolbox, and now I'm going to pull out just this square container. I'm going to drag it to fit all of these objects. Now, when I click away and click back onto my container, you can see all of those objects are automatically linked up and magnetized to that container. If you want to change that, let me just move my video here. You can go ahead and see this magnetize button on the properties bar. If you uncheck that, then you've unlinked those objects. Now, if you move this container, you'll see it moves separately from the rest of the objects, but keeping that on makes it really easy to have all those things stay grouped together and in one place. So now let's look at how we can make this custom shape available to me on more than one diagram or available to my team. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my shape manager, and I can get there by either clicking the shape manager button at the top of the toolbox, or this shape button at the bottom does the same thing. I'm going to scroll to the bottom, and I'm going to create a new custom library. I'll call this account mapping key. I'm going to save it. Oops, and now let's go back in here and grab it, turn it on. I always forget to push the plus button. Make sure that you see that show up there. So now you can see that this is on, and I can see it here show up in the bottom of my toolbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this container and I'm going to go ahead and drag it into my new account mapping key shape library. Now, if I open a new page and I drag this shape out, oh, it should have all of my objects there. Let's go back and try that one more time. You can see it save my container. I'm going to go ahead and group these real quickly. There we go. Now let's drag it in. There we go. So you can see that all of the objects are saved there. If I go back to my new page, drag it out, voila. So instead of having to create that over and over again or copy and paste it into each new account mapping diagram, I've got it easily right there. Now, if you want to share this across your team so that one person can create it and you can share it across everybody else's diagrams, I'm going to go back into my shape manager, scroll down and find my custom shape library here. And then I can go up and just toggle this team sharing button on. And that way, everyone's going to be able to see this shape library inside of their custom libraries. So that can be a great feature if you've got a big team that are making some of the same types of diagrams. All right. From here, I want to move into looking quickly at adding some links to your diagram. So let's take a look. As you can see, this is my kind of improved version of this org chart. And one thing that I have up here is I've got my Google Sheet data. So I'm keeping all of the names and contact details for these individuals in a Google Sheet. And I want people to be able to like quickly access that, make any changes there, and then have those push back into my org chart. So let's go ahead and go back to our version over here. To add this link, so I'm going to move my video one more time. I'm going to go back to my search button again. One of my favorite things is to use logos, common logos, here in the images section. Pull this out. Makes it, I think it's kind of a cheater way for people to realize that it's something that's clickable and will get them where they need to be. So I pulled out the drive icon. And then what I can do is I can select this shape, click on this hyperlink actions button, and then choose an action. So in the actions menu, I'll go down to external link, and then I'll go ahead and I can paste in the link to that spreadsheet in my Google Drive. I can also select if I want to open it in a new window or not, and then click done. And I'll go ahead and just click back over here to our final version. When I click on this, it's going to open, and it's going to tell me that I made this link when I was in another Google account, but you can see how that will work. So you can do that for all sorts of things. If you want people to be linking to external resources, maybe we had a client that used this as they were making a new user flow in a new product. So they had wireframes and mockups of how things were going to look embedded into the flowchart, and they used this linking feature for people to be able to link out to Dropbox and see the most current version of how things were looking. So great application of using that external link. Let's move now and look at layers, and we're going to be playing a little bit now with more actions that you can use, but we'll start by opening up this layers diagram. All right, perfect. So this is an order process that we put together, pretty simple. And I'm going to show you quickly what our final product will look like, and we'll look at how to get there. So in this version, I've got my original version, and then I also have my ideal process. So these are things that I'm suggesting would be great to improve the way that we're doing things. So let's go back and go ahead and take a look at how we can create that ourselves. In our original document, you're going to start by coming over to the doc on the right side of your page, and then click on this layers button. You can click plus layer, and this you can see adds like a translucent overlay to our document and tells us we're working on a new layer. I'm going to call this ideal process. Now, anytime that I see this translucent overlay on my editor, I know that I'm working on this different layer. So as I pull shapes out, they're going to appear on this different layer. I'm going to go ahead and make these a different color so that they're easier to see. One thing that's nice about using layers is I can actually connect shapes on my new layer to my existing diagram. So if I pull out a line here, you can see I'm able to link it to things that are existing on the page. So I can be interacting with that original process, but on this new layer that will disappear as I toggle layers on and off. So that gives you an idea of how to create layers. You can create multiple layers. And then as you're adding things, putting shapes on different layers, you can change the visibility of those layers by using this little eye icon here. All right, so once we've added our layers, I'm going to actually jump over to this version of our document. Once we've added that layer, what's helpful is if you're sharing this with other people, you want a way for them to be able to easily look at how that layer is working. So that's why I've added these buttons to click here to see the original process, and then click here to see my new proposed ideal process. So once you finish your layer, let's look at adding these buttons. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to pull out now a button. Click here for new process. Now I can style this shape however I want, but once I'm ready to add the action to it, select the shape, click on this actions button again. And this time as an action, we're going to choose to toggle layers. So this is going to turn my layer on or off. It will ask me which layers I want to toggle. I'm going to go ahead and choose just my ideal process. And yep, perfect, done. So now, even though this isn't the pretty version of this, you get the idea. I can go ahead and click on this button to turn that layer on or off. One thing that's nice about this is you'll notice that I'm using this keyboard shortcut to activate the layer while I'm in the editor. When you share this with others in your organization, if you give them view-only access, we'll go ahead and see what that looks like by using present mode. They're just going to be able to hover over that button and click to turn things on or off. So kind of a nice way to be able to show multiple versions of things without having to create separate diagrams for every one of those different proposals. I quickly want to show you just some of the other options here in this actions panel. You can see we've got options to toggle layers, show or hide layers. So depending on how complicated, what things you want to be shown or hidden, you can create different buttons that do that. We can link to a page. So if you've got a diagram with a whole bunch of different pages, you can go ahead and link to different pieces of that. Where I've seen this be really effective is if you have a really complicated process, you can show kind of a parent version of that, a high-level version, and then you can have individual points linked to sub-processes. So that way I can click somewhere and see that, all the steps involved in that one piece in further detail. External link, we looked at that, pretty self-explanatory. You can also link to email. So if somebody clicks it, it'll open up an email that's going to the person that you want them to connect with. So some great options there for actions, layers, buttons, and I think people have done some really interesting things here. All right, well, let's move now into looking at automating your diagrams using data linking. I'm going to move back here. I'm going to go ahead and open this data linking example. Now, something that's cool about what I'm about to show you is that we have a version of this that we can send to you that will walk you through step by step how to do what we're about to do. So if you want to practice on your own using what we're working with today, I'll go ahead and have Christy and Gabe post in the chat the link so that you can go ahead and download this version and play with it on your own. All right. So what we're going to do here, we're just going to show you quickly how to add data into specific shapes using this floor plan example. We'll then look at some more exciting examples for how you can use this in just a moment. So I want to create a dynamic floor plan for my organization and add information about who's going to be sitting where, what their titles are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by going up to File and Import Data. Another option for how to do this is to open your doc and go to this bottom icon here. That's also going to give us options for importing data. So I'm going to go back here, import data. I'm going to import data from a Google Sheet. Once I do this, we're going to connect in with the spreadsheets in my Google Drive. I'm going to go ahead and select floor plan. And then Lucidchart's going to add that into the data that's attached here in the data panel in the doc. So you can see all the information that was in my sheet is now existing here inside of Lucidchart. So I want to add people's information here. What I'm going to do is I've got all the information over here. I'm going to go ahead and click on this row of data, and I'm going to drag it on top of this desk shape. So now, while nothing's displaying here, there is actually data that's associated with this shape. And that's what I'm seeing up here in this top panel in the doc. And getting some very helpful tips from Lucidchart on how to use this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the text that I want to show on the surface of the chart. So I want to add this person's name. I'm going to click on this +T button and add the individual's name. I also want to go ahead and include this person's title. Now I want to style how this is looking. Come on. So I'm going to double click on Tyler's name. I'm going to make it bold, and I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit bigger. So now we've got Tyler. I also, instead of having to do this repetitively for each of our different people, I'm going to go ahead and save this as a custom shape like we did with our key. I'm going to go ahead and just do this. I'm going to go ahead and say data linking, click the plus button. There we go. Save that. So now I'm going to take this shape, drag it into my custom shapes area, and then I'm going to drag it out again. And you can see Lucidchart is remembering the data that I want to appear on this shape and drag it into this next text position. Now this is where someone else is sitting. So I'm going to drag the data from my next person, link it to the shape, replace the text that's in there for my custom shape. And now you can see Pradeep's information is there. What's awesome about this is if people change roles or if anything changes with my data, instead of changing it in Lucidchart, I can change it from my Google Sheet. And those changes are synced every 30 seconds. So it makes it really, really easy. In fact, let's go ahead and show you how that will work here. So inside of Drive, I'm going to go ahead and open up this sheet. Instead of Pradeep, we're now going to say this person is Joe. When I go back to my document, I can wait for the updates to sync, or I can push this refresh button on the right, and you can see that the name has changed. So I can keep doing this for some of these other desks. I'm going to add a lane to this one, replace. So you can see how that can really save you time. I don't know that updating floor plans is how most of our customers use this, but a lot of people in manufacturing who are measuring bottlenecks certain places or wanting to monitor different systems find a lot of value in this. One thing I want to point out while we're here, and we'll look at this in another example as well, is that you can also add conditional formatting to your shapes. So for example, when I look at Tyler's information here, if I come up into his shape data, I can apply some conditional formatting. So on my sheet, you can see that I've applied conditional formatting for whether or not someone is going to be on vacation. So I know that this field has conditional formatting associated with it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this little ellipsis next to the text button and say apply imported fill color. I'm going to go ahead and save this shape over here again. Delete these ones we were working on previously because now I want this to be importing that conditional data. So now, just so you can see what I'm talking about, I'm going to pull Elaine over here. I'm going to replace the data. And you can see that because Elaine is on vacation, the shape data has updated to show me that conditional formatting. So if I go back up here and I say that Tyler is on vacation, come back, refresh, it updates there. So let's look now at maybe a more useful real-world example of how you might use this. This is an example of monitoring your systems with live updates. So this Ethernet shape that we have, you can see when I click on it and I can look at the shape data up here, I can go ahead and apply that conditional formatting. And now, as that data changes, and look at this as we keep talking because this will change as the data is fed into my Google Sheet, this will change as those changes are pushed forward. Now, it might be a little bit confusing. We're looking at this shape data, but that doesn't appear anywhere here in my floor plan data. So one thing that's awesome is that you can add multiple sheets of data to the same diagram. So if you need to be pulling data from different sources, you can put all of that into your Lucidchart doc and then add it in different places where it applies. So if I wanted to add multiple sheets to my diagram, I just click that drop-down arrow, and then I can add data sets by clicking this button here, and it will walk me through again how to link that additional data. So that gives you an idea of how that will work. If you guys have questions about data linking, go ahead and shoot those over to Christy and Gabe. They'll address those, and then in just a moment, we're going to pause, and I'll see if we've got any themes of questions, and we can answer those together as a group. All right. The next thing I wanted to look at was some advanced features for sharing your diagrams across people who are inside of Lucidchart and also those who aren't using Lucidchart. So of course, ideally everyone has a Lucidchart account and it's easy to collaborate on things. But if you have people who aren't using it, I want to show you some options for how to share your work with them, and especially options for having your diagrams automatically update, even though you've shared external links with other people. So let's go ahead and get started by clicking on our share button here in the top right. I'll save this. And now we're all familiar with how we do our simplistic sharing here. But let's go ahead and click on the advanced button in the bottom left and move into our publish. So publish URL is a way that you can send documents to people without Lucidchart accounts. They won't need to log into Lucidchart to see the diagrams you're sharing with them, but they can get updates as you're making them in your actual diagram. So you can publish a full document URL, and that will give them access to everything in your document. If you have multiple pages, they'll be able to go through each of those different pages. They'll be able to click on action links. They'll be able to see updates as they're coming through. You can require a password if you want to protect how people are able to access that information. But one thing I want to point out is that you have some additional options here for how you export pieces of your diagram. So we're going to go ahead this time and do just an area selection. I only want to show part of this diagram to the people that I'm working with. I'm going to click area selection, and then I'm going to go ahead and click PNG and select a level of quality that I want this to be in. So I'm going to do screen view, publish selection, and then Lucidchart is going to bring me back and tell me to click and drag the select part of the page. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. I want to just be showing people how this part of our diagram is working. So I've now published that selection, and I can go ahead and get an idea of how that's looking by clicking on the link here in the published links section. So I'm going to click on that. And you can see the only thing that's been published out of my diagram is the piece that I selected. And what's great, hopefully this plays nice and it will change for us, but as this Ethernet shape changes colors, those changes will be pushed into this external URL. So this makes it easy to share just pieces of things that maybe you want people to be monitoring or watching without having to share your entire diagram. I'm going to refresh just to see. Whenever I'm demoing this, it always takes a while to change colors. I need to increase the frequency that our Google Sheet is sending new data across. So that gives you an idea of one way that you can share in a little bit more advanced way people who aren't using Lucidchart. We also have, of course, our social sharing options. If these are enabled on your account, you'll find them here. These give you really great step-by-step instructions on how to embed your charts on social media channels. And then for those of you who maybe want to put your Lucidchart on an intranet page or your own website, you're able to do that using this embed code. Let me just look quickly. That's right. I wanted to also quickly discuss sharing folders. So this is pretty intuitive, but in case you've never used it before, it was something that I didn't even think about using until someone pointed it out to me. If you're using a lot of different diagrams and documents with a team or with a group of people, instead of sharing each one individually, it can be helpful to put them all in a folder and then go ahead and just share that folder. So I'm going to go ahead and share this with Christy. And because I'm on my demo account, she's not going to pull up. She's going to be able to edit and share. Once I share this with her, she'll see this show up on her side. We'll get a share icon on the actual folder. And then whenever we're inside of this folder, if we start creating new documents in that folder, they're automatically shared with everyone who has access to that folder. So that can make it much more efficient if you're sharing a lot of documents with different individuals. Just put them all in there, share the folder with them, and that way everyone can keep up to date with what's happening on those different diagrams. All right, I'm going to go ahead. So in the next couple of minutes, we've probably got 10 more minutes. I'm going to look at master pages that you can use, master pages and templates. So if you're recycling look and feel for certain things or want to standardize how things look, we'll be looking at that next. We'll also be looking at presentation and then a couple of integrations. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause for like 1 minute and check in with Christy and Gabe, make sure that there aren't any glaring questions that we're missing, and then I'll be right back and we'll move into that next piece. 1 second. All right, perfect. So it looks like oops, turn my video back on. One question that we've had is about Google Drive. We're gonna look at a couple of integrations, so I will mention that when we get to our integrations portion. So that's great, we're gonna keep moving forward. So one thing that a lot of clients like to do is they like to have a standardized look and feel for their diagrams. They want to control some of the information that's being presented. So we're going to show you how to do that now with master pages. I'm opening a new diagram. And let's imagine that this is maybe a document we're using internally. I really want some standardized branding and a couple of features to be included on every instance of the diagram inside of this doc. So I'm going to pull out this shape, make a nice header banner here, delete out this text, give it a color. Another thing that I want to add is a logo. Okay, so I'm going to pull this in here. I'm going to resize it. I'm going to, oops, not do that. Grab the actual shape. Come on. Pull it up here, make it fit. And then another thing is sometimes it can be helpful to track who's in a diagram or when it's last been updated or modified. So I want to show you how to use some smart fields that will automatically update that information so that individuals don't have to. If you go up into the Insert menu on the Properties bar, well, above the Properties bar, you have all of these options below the line to add smart fields. So I'm going to add last modified by. That's going to keep track of who's been in the document making changes. And then I'm also going to insert last modified date and time. So I want to know who made those changes and when did they make them. So now I'm going to pull this up here. Again, I can get in and customize how that looks. Maybe I want this first line to be bold. And then as people work on this diagram, I'll be able to see who's been in there and who's been making updates. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly share this with Christy. Christy or Christy P? Christy. At lucidchart.com. Oh, not as a title. We'll call this master page. We're going to share with Christy. Lucidchart.com. Send it over to her. We'll give her a minute to get in there and make some changes. Then we'll come back and take a look at this. But as she makes updates, instead of it being my Lucidchart demo account that's last modified this document, it's going to be Christy. So now that I've set all of this up, I want to save this as a master page, and I want it to apply on other pages so people can easily just use this to keep everything looking really sharp. So in the bottom kind of page tabs, I'm going to click this drop down, and I'm going to choose to convert this to a master page. So now I can see with this M that this is on my master page. As I add new pages to my diagram, if I click this drop down, I now have the option to apply a master page. When I select this page one, you can see that it automatically adds in the details that I've put on my master page. So that's an easy way to just quickly keep things really customized. Now, a lot of people are curious after they've seen this, like, oh, how can I make sure that everybody uses that all the time? Like they don't have to go in and apply a master page. It's just automatically there. My recommendation for that is to use templates. So we would create a diagram that has a master page like this. And then I'm going to go back to my Documents tab. I've got my master page diagram, and I'm going to go ahead and click More, Convert to Template. I can choose a category where I want to put it. I'm going to put this one in Other. I can add a description if I like. Click Save. Now this is a template. So I can send this out and share it with my entire team and say, you know, whenever you make a new diagram, use the master page template. Once my team members have that, instead of getting an option to open this diagram, they only have the option to create a new diagram from this diagram. So when I click New, automatically, I've got that master page applied. So that can be a great way to keep everything really standardized. I'll work on this diagram, and then I'll be prompted to save it as, you know, whatever title it is of what I'm working on, and can keep moving forward from there. So master pages and templates, obviously there are other ways to use templates as well. If you've got things that you're using a lot, or you want to save one version of a diagram and just have people iterate on it, saving something as a template can be helpful that way as well. All right. Next, let's look at slides, and then we're going to look at integrations quickly and wrap up with any questions. So let's go ahead and open my SOX diagram here. And imagine that I'm presenting this to a group of people, and I want to show it not just as an entire block diagram, but instead I want to show different pieces of this diagram in different phases. So if you open in the doc your slides button, you're able to add different slides. I'll need to move my video again. There we go. We'll be able to add different slides to this diagram. So I'm going to click plus slide, and here my slide is. I'm going to go ahead and select this crosshairs that's in the top left corner, drag it to where I want it. I can resize the slide to include whatever details I want. That looks good to me. I'm going to add another slide now that shows maybe the next phase of the process down here. Oops. I'm going to select this, drag it out. Perfect. So now when I click present, I can get an idea of how this slide is going to look. So I'm going to start here. The next slide moves me here. Maybe I decide I actually want to include a slide that shows the title. So I'm going to drag this up here. You can see how using slides will influence a little bit of how you create your document. So this here. I can drag this slide to the top now so that it appears first. And then I can use this if I share as view only mode, then people can click through the different slides of my presentation and see that presentation. I can also go ahead and send this to Google Slides if I want to. So that way, when I click send to Google Slides, Lucidchart will show me that it's rendering it for Google Slides. It takes a couple of minutes, but then you get a Google Slide presentation that just has each of those different slides from your Lucidchart doc as different Google Slides. Another nice way to use this is you can actually integrate it with PowerPoint and play the presentation from Lucidchart in PowerPoint. So it's almost like a presentation inside of a presentation. And we can look at that if enough people are interested in seeing how to do that. So that gives you an idea of how presentation works. Beyond that, let's move quickly and look at a couple of integrations. We'll definitely show you Google Drive and Google Docs. We can also look at Confluence. And then if there are other ones that you guys want to see, let us know. So let's move quickly now into Google Drive. So you can see in my Drive, oh, I haven't turned it on. This is great. So if you can't see Google Drive in your Google Drive, it means you haven't activated it from your Lucidchart account. So let me just go ahead. And actually, I want to point out Feature Find right now. So if you're not sure where to find something, you can go ahead and click Feature Find, and we're going to say Integrate Drive. I can click on Google Drive. This will take me to a Help Center article and give me an idea of how to connect there. I'm actually, for the sake of time, just going to zip back over here to my personal account, go into my document here. And then zip over into Drive. So what you can see here is in my Drive account, I have a Lucidchart folder. So once you've integrated with Drive, you'll have all of your Lucidchart docs available here. You can drag those into different folders in Google Drive and keep them there. I will mention that when you do integrate with Google Drive, your folder structure will be, it's not going to maintain your folder structure. So all of your diagrams are going to just appear in this one folder, this Lucidchart folder. You can move them around though into your other Google Drive folders and use them that way. From Google Drive, you can do things like share, preview documents, move them around. So some helpful features there. Let's actually look quickly at how to integrate a diagram into Google Doc. So I'm going to open a new Google Doc. From here, I'm going to go ahead and click on add-ons. I'm going to get an add-on. And I'm going to type in, actually, Lucidchart's right here. You can always search for it if you don't see it. So I'm going to add that, go through a couple of integration steps. Great. Now when I go back to add-ons, I'll be able to see that Lucidchart has been added right here. I can now get started. Ooh. Grant access. Perfect. So now when I come back into my Google Doc, you can see that I have access to all of my different diagrams here on the right. I'm going to select this socks diagram. I'm going to click Insert. And voila, here is my diagram. Now, if I make any changes to this, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go ahead and move this around. I'll change the color of this object. Those changes are going to go ahead and be reflected when I go up to add-ons again, Lucidchart, and then update inserted diagrams. So this solves the problem of using screenshots, like multiple screenshots, a bunch of version nightmares when you're integrating your diagrams into different documents or different apps. The other integration that I wanted to quickly show you is for Confluence. So we'll do that fast, and then we'll go ahead and get to questions. So if you have questions, be thinking of them, let us know in the Q&A or in the chat. So I'm going to open my instance of Confluence, and I'm going to go ahead and open this demo test page, and then go ahead and click on Edit. One thing I will mention is if you're on an enterprise account, Confluence will need to be added by your admin. So if you're not seeing the option to add your Lucidchart docs here, that could be a reason why you're not seeing this. Now, when I click on the Insert More button, Lucidchart diagrams is an option here. I can click on it, and I get a rich viewer of my Lucidchart documents page. So I can navigate, select whatever diagram it is that I want to share, and it will be integrated into my Confluence page. This is a rich viewer too, which is nice. Oh, I need to publish this first. Let me just pull this up so we can get to the publish button. Perfect. So once we publish, when people are looking at this diagram, when it loads, perfect. They will be able to zoom in and out and then click on different buttons. So that rich view translates over. Also, if you have multiple pages, they can navigate to those in the integration. And that's true across most of our integrations. This rich viewer is available to people, so it gives them a lot of access to be seeing all the cool stuff that you have in Lucidchart inside of these different apps. Let me just check to make sure I'm not missing any of the pieces I wanted to share with you guys. All right, last thing that I'll share before we move into the Q&A is just one more hack for using Lucidchart. For those of you who are power users and working in the product a lot, one thing that can be helpful is using full screen mode. So you can click full screen. That gets rid of these toolbars unless you hover over the areas where they exist. So that gives you a little bit more room to be working on your diagrams and really accessing all the space, especially if you have complicated things happening here. It can be a useful tip. All right, so I'm going to take one more pause to check in with Christy and Gabe. We're also going to launch our last poll question asking you what you thought of today's session. If you have any advice for things that you'd like to see in future sessions, please let us know. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. And we'll just pause for 1 second while I check in with the Q&A. One moment. All right, so it sounds like we're all good here. Don't have any questions coming through, or at least ones that we haven't already resolved. So we'll stay on for just another minute or two. If you do have questions, make sure to shoot them through. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us.